Not the 8th.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So does that work for you? Yeah, 7:30.
It's very tough because that shul, and then I come home. We'll see.
No,
Shul's
but
at 6.
Mincha now is 5 to
6.
6.
Yeah. I'll try.
Okay.
I'll do the best I can.
Okay. So we're on Samech Zayin Amud Aleph.
Samech.
Yeah, 67 on the top.
Okay. No problem.
We're talking about the rules that if couples get married and there's Kiddushin and there's no Aveira, then the Yichus follows the father. So we brought a case, a convert, Ger Shenosa Mamzeres, Yesh Kiddushin, there is Kiddushin, a convert's allowed to marry Mamzeres. Vein Aveira, so there's no Aveira. And yet, Avlad Hoylech Achra Pogum, the child is a mamzer, not a ger. According to your rule, the child should be a ger, the Tanya. Ger should not so mamzer, so Vlad mamzer, did Rabbi Yossi. So the Gemara answers, Amarle Misavris Masis Rabbi Yossi. Who told you there are Mishas Rabbi Yossi? Masis Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar ger lo yisa mamzeres, that it's also for a ger to marry a mamzeres, and therefore it's a case of Yesh Kiddush Yesh Aveira, and therefore Avlad Holechachara Pogum. That's why it's a mamzer. So the Gemara says Vinisnaya. Why didn't you bring that case as the example? Tana Kol Mokom the Seifa Lasui. When the later part of it said Kol Mokom, that included it. Sheyesh Kiddush Yesh Aveira. That included this case of according to Rabbi Yehuda, ger lo yisa mamzeres. The Gemara has another answer. Iboy seima lo olam Rabbi Yossi. The Tana ezazu, when it said, what is an example? Limuute. That only these cases are kiddushin ve'ein aveira, and there where the Vlad follows the Rav, and not this case. Afraid to go more of the Sulo, I'll show you other examples. Varei Chalal Shenosu Bas Yisrael, a product of a Kohen marrying a Grusha, a boy. He's a Chalal who marries a Bas Yisrael. So a Bas Yisrael has no Aveira to marry a Chalal. A Kohen can't marry a Chalala, but a regular Yisrael can marry a Chalal. So Yesh Kiddushin Ve'en Aveira, Avlad Hoylech Achara Zocher. And yet we say the Vlad follows the Chalal. Haloi Kashik, Rabbi Dustoy ben Rav Yehuda Svirle. They go like Rav Yehuda ben Dustoy, that such a Vlad is kosher legamre. It's not a Chalal. Vare Yisrael Shenasa Chalala, a male Jew who marries a female Chalal, the Yesh Kiddushin, Ve'en Aveira, Avlad Holech Achra Zocher. There we say there's no problem with the child. He's a regular Yisrael. And that's the halacha. Yisrael or Levi can marry a Chalala, and the Vlad is a regular Yisrael. And if they have a daughter, the daughter can marry a Kohen. So Tana Komokom Deresha Lasli. The Komokom of where it says Yesh Kiddush Ve'en Aveira came to include that case. Ivan Isnayu Badei listed over there b'mafurish because Mishum Deloy Masni, you're not verbally going to be able to write it because Hechi Nisni. The Mishnah said Kohenes Levi of Yisraelis. Now, if you throw in there Chalala Shenisis Lekohen Levi of Yisrael, you can't say that Chalala Lekohen Michasya. So it doesn't fit. Freit the Gemara va'ika Rabba bar Rav Chana Sham Rabba Chana Am Rav Yochanan. Mitzri Streni. So, just a introduction. We know that Ammoni and Moavi were two nations that we were warned not to marry. So, a male Ammoni, Now we're talking about somebody who converted to Judaism. You can't marry them when they're goyim. So, but an Ammoni who converted to Judaism, lo yavo b'kol, you can't marry them. They could marry a mamzer, they could marry a ger, but a regular Jew can't marry an Ammoni. Now, a Moabite, a female Ammoni or a female Moavi, when they convert, there's no problem with them at all. You can marry them right away. In fact, whose great-grandmother was a Moavi? David HaMelech, right? Rus HaMoaviyah converted, and there's no problem at all with her yichus. Okay. Then you have Mitzri. The Torah says, Dor Shlishi Yavo Bakal. So if a Mitzri converts to Judaism, he's a Mitzri Rishon. Are you allowed to marry him? No. You can marry him, a mamzer, he can marry a ger, but he can't marry a regular Jew. Now, a Mitzri marries another Mitzri, and they have a child. That is a Mitzri Sheni. The Mitzri Sheni also cannot marry a regular Jew. They can marry a mamzer, a ger. Now, if the Mitzri Sheni marries a ger, and then they have a child, that's a Mitzri Shlishi. Now he can marry anybody he wants. Okay. With that introduction, Mitzri Sheni, so this is a second generation Mitzri, Shenasa Mitzris Rishona, that married a Egyptian woman who had converted, so she's a Mitzri Rishona. And now they have a third generation Mitzri. B'na Shlishi Havi. Right? And can be marry any person. So this is
doesn't the yichus go after the mother? The mother's a Mitzri Rishon.
No, so this is an example. Let's follow the rules of our Mishnah. Is there Kiddushin? Yes. Is there an Aveira? No. And therefore, based on that, our Mishnah told us the Vlad follows the father. Now, the father was a Mitzri Sheni, so the child should also be a Mitzri Sheni. Is what the Gemara is. That's the kasha of Rabbi Rav Chana. Tana kol makam dereisha lasui. So this is another example. This is another example where it does work, and he was a Mitzri Sheni, the father, and it does follow the father. Why wasn't it mentioned? And now the child's a Mitzri Shlishi, which works because Kol Mokom included it. L'das Rav Dimi Sha'omar Sheni Avi. Now, not everybody agrees that this child is a Shlishi. Some hold he's a Sheni. So he holds Tana Ezazu is Lemu'ute, because Ezazu comes to leave certain things out. This is left out, it doesn't follow the rule. You have Goyim who married each other. Halach achra zachar. Meaning, you have a regular Goy who might marry an Ammoni or a Mitzri who are not converted. Two Goyim. So a regular Goy can convert right away and marry into Klal Yisrael. Only an Ammoni might never be able to marry. Or a Mitzri have to wait 3 generations. So who does the Yichus follow? So it follows the male, whoever the father was. However, Nizgairu, let's say these two Goyim had converted, Halach achra pogam shebishneim. So then you have to resurrect what was their original nationhood. So and you go after the worst one. So between a Mitzri and an Ammoni, they would be an Ammoni who can never marry after 10 generations. Or let's say if it was a regular goy with a Mitzri, he'd have to be a Mitzri. So Tana Ezazu L'Ma'uti, the Ezazu excluded that case. Hi Mai, Iyamid Bishlam Masnisim Krav Yehuda. Remember, we said, oh, the Mishnah can't be Rabbi Yosi. So we said the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. So then we can say Shekol Malkam of Dereshas Lasui, like the case of Yisrael Shanasa Chalala, where we said that the child follows the father. And also we included Rabbi Baruch Chana of Mitzri Sheni, who becomes a Mitzri Shlishi. And that which we said Ezazu is Lemu'ute, the Rav Dimi case where he said the Mitzri Sheni on. And Komokum the Seifa was Lasui Ger Shenosa Mamzeres. Included the case of a Ger Shenosa Mamzeres that it's a Mamzer. Eliyabet Rabbi Yosi. So Komokum the Reisha Kida Amra. You could continue. Ezezu Kida Amra. Ela Komokum the Seifa Lasui Mai. What is according to Rabbi Yosi, what is the Komokum going to say of the Seifa? So Ulatamech, even the way you want to learn. The Rav Yehuda Ezazu the Seifa Lamali. Ella, you can't learn anything. I did the Tana Reisha, Tana Ezazu, Tana Seifa Ezazu. They was just put in stylistically and not to teach me Allah. Achanami, I did Tana Reisha, Komokum Tana Reisha Seifa Komokum. So we don't darshan the way we did because we end up saying that it was all stylistic. Gufa. Okay, let us learn something in detail. That which we mentioned in passing. Kiyasa Ravin on Rav Yechna, the Umos. When we're talking about Goyim, who have children, and the two Goyim had married each other when they were Goyim. And now you have to determine what is the yichus of their child. The child comes to Beis Din, and we ask him, well, who was your mother, who was your father? Oh, my mother was a Russian, a Slav, where there's no prohibition in the Torah. But my mother was a Mitzri. So Beis Din has to evaluate what is the status of this kid. So halach achra zachar, we go after who the father was. So if the father was a Slav, then Beis Din will accept him right away. If the father was a Mitzri, he's going to have to wait 3 generations. He can be Magayer, but we're going to inform him it's only going to be your grandchildren who can marry into anyone, Klal Yisrael. You are only going to have to be married. You have to look for a Mamzeres. You have to look for another Ger. Now, Nizgairu, if before they had children, these two Goyim married, if before they had children, they converted, and then they married, so then we use the worst yichus. Mitzri versus Ammoni, we would say he's an Ammoni. Mitzri versus nobody, he's a Mitzri. Now the Gemara wants to know, my be'umos halach achra zachar. Kiditani. Minayin le'echa ben ha'umos. We're not talking about the Sheva Amim. Chiti, Knani, Yevusi, those are out of it. Losi schaten bam. You can't marry them at all. You got to kill them. Lo sechaya b'hem. We're talking about Goyim that lived outside of Eretz Yisrael. Shebo ala Knanis. This Slav lived with the Knanis. V'hoili ben. She'ata r'shai l'knoisa be'em. Remember, in Eretz Yisrael, you weren't allowed to keep the Sheva Knanim Canaanite nations alive. You could not buy him as an Eved. How do we know that I'm allowed to buy such a person? Because the father was not the Kanani, the mother was. So the yichus of the child is going to be after the father, which is a Slav. And there's no problem with having an Eved from a Slav. Because there's going to be a way to purchase an Eved, even though one of the parents are from Eretz Canaan, in this case where the mother was a Canaanite. Yachol af Eved Shaba al Shifcha Mina Umos. And let's say you have an Eved Kanani who had relations with a Shifcha who was a Slav. V'hoilid ben. Shata Rishalik Nosa be'Eved. You might think you could buy him as an Eved. Talmud Lomer Asher Holudi Barzachem Min Anoladim Barzachem. The Lomina Garim Barzachem. If the father was from the Sheva Umos, you would not be able to purchase him as an Eved, only if the father was somebody that came from Chutz La'aretz. Then we said Nizgairu, if these Goyim converted, the child will be the worst yichus of the two parents. Now, B'mai, what's the case? The father was a Mitzri, the female was an Amoinis. So my pogum ikka. So the Amoinis is not pogum. Once we're talking about after they converted. So she can marry anybody. Because Amoni velo Amonit, and therefore she can marry anybody. So she's not pogum at all. I mean, technically she can't marry a Kohen, but she wouldn't be considered pogum. Ela b'amoini shenas mitzvahs. We're talking about the father was an Amoini who converted to Judaism. The mother is a Mitzri who converted to Judaism. So, Izachar Avi. So, if the child is male, Hashad Yabasrei Didei. So, we say that he would be an Ammoni, because that he would never be able to marry into regular Klal Yisrael. So that's the pogum. That's the worst pogum. Vim nekeva avya. So who's worse, a Mitzris or an Ammonis? Well, right, it's going to be the Mitzris, because an Ammonis is not a problem. If we say that if the daughter follows the Ammoni part, she's perfectly good. So in that case, it makes more sense to make her a Mitzri, because she has to wait 3 generations before she can get married. She should be considered a Mitzri Sheni. She'll still be Asr Lavabakal, but her child will be able to marry into the Kol. Then we said, Kol She'ein La Alav Kidushin. Your relative, you have no Kiddushin, but other people can marry her. There we said the Vlad is a mamzer. Menanamili. Where do you learn this? Amrav Chia Barav Amrav Yechnu Matu Ba Mishum Rav Yanai. Vravacha Bred Rav Umatu Ba Mishum Rav Yosef Lili. Amar Kra V'yatzah min Beito V'alcha V'aisa Li'ish Acher. This is a pasuk in the Parsha of Get, that after a woman receives a divorce from her husband, she left his home and she had Kiddushin with a new man. So we've darshan, la'acherim v'lo lekrovim. She can marry somebody, to a stranger, but not to relatives, because there won't be haisa. Haisa refers to Kiddushin, and there won't be Kiddushin toifus there. She's allowed to marry those other people, but not, and there's no Kiddushin to kroivim. Rashi says, Haisa loshen Kiddushnihi. So, Maski l'Ravava, ve'ema la'acher v'lo lebet, maybe to somebody else, not to the son of her husband. Because if you marry the son of the husband, it's Misa's Bezdin. So maybe you need Misa's Bezdin to say there's no Kiddushin. Ben Badeksiv Bey. It says, Lo yikach ish es eshes aviv. A man should not take his father's wife. And it says yikach. Ain't, so there's no Kiddushin toifus. So we already have rejected a ben. Acher lamli shmamin al acherim v'lo lekrov. Teaches me that there's no Kiddushim to relatives, even when the punishment is only kores. I say only in parentheses, only to differentiate that it's not capital punishment. Freit the Gemara, ema aide v'aide leben. Maybe both psukim are referring that she can't marry the son. Why do we need two psukim? The pasuk of lo yikach is lechatchila, and v'ha v'aisali shacher that b'di'evet if he went ahead and be makadosh, it doesn't work. So the Gemara says we don't need it. Lechatchila, the fact that there's no kiddushin, toifus by a son of the father, we know from a different source. May achos isha nafka, from when your wife's sister, that you're not allowed to live with them, and there's a kavachomer. Uma achos isha, which is bekoris, loti kodesh, that you're not allowed to have kiddushin with her, because it says in pasuk, isha el achosa lo sikach. Lo sikach means there's no kicha, there's no kiddushin. So if achos isha, which is only bekoris, there's no kiddushin. Chayve misa is based in, which is eshes aviv lo kol shekain. So I already have a pasuk for lechatchila. Still, the Gemara persists. Amen. Ida v'idi, maybe the pasuk of lo sikach and v'aisali shacher is ba'achos isha. Ha lechatchila and ha b'di'evet. Now listen what the Gemara does, Chanami. So now we say that that's in fact how to learn. Achos isha, we need the pasuk of lo sikach and li'ishacher to teach me that achos isha, which is only b'kares, there's no kiddushin either lechatchila or b'di'evet. Fine. Ashkechen achos isha, shar arayos minala. What about all the other prohibited relations that there's no kiddushin toifus? Yalfinon me'achos isha. We learn out from a binyan av. A binyan av means if I see the halacha in one place, I can learn it out to all other places, unless I have a pircha, unless I have a way to break the binyan av. But right now, the havamin of the Gemara is to learn shar arayos from achos isha. Ma achos isha miyuchedes. Shehi erva. The chayav and alzdona kares. It's a prohibited relation, and there's kares. Val shikagosu chates. And if you do the b'shoige, you bring a korban chates. And lo safsi bo kiddushin, because it says lo sikach, so there's no kiddushin. Av kol shehi erva, the chayav and alzdona kares, val shegosu chates, lo tafsi bo kiddush. So now we have a rule. Anything which is an erva, means a relation. There's kares, if you do it b'mezid, and chates b'shoigeg, there's no kiddush. Bishlma kulo asyan, fine. El eishes ish, the eishes ach, ikle mifrach. We're going to have a problem with another man's wife. It's not related to you, right? But she's an erva. Excuse me. El eishes ish, the eishes ach, and your brother-in-law, the wife of your brother, ikle mifrach. How? Mala achos isha shekain ein la heter b'maka mitzvah. your sister, your wife's sister, there's no mitzvahs yibum. There's no inyan of marrying your wife's sister. But there's a leniency by Eshesach because there, if there's no children, you're allowed to live with her. So that's problem number one. Eshesach is a problem because there's a leniency by Eshesach. Now, what's the leniency of Eshesish? Malahanach, your wife's sister and your brother's wife, shekain ein la heter b'chaye oisra. As long as the people are alive, meaning as long as your wife is alive, as long as your brother's alive, there's no heter to live with these women. While an Eishes Ish, who is the person who asers her? Her husband. But if her husband gives her a divorce, you could live with her. So there are two heterim, one by Eishesach and one by Eishes Ish. And these two Ikela Mifrachs cause us to reject the whole castle we just built. We just built a castle of Achos Isha and learned Shara Rayas from Achos Isha and Binyanav, but we just knocked down the castle because it doesn't work. We wouldn't be able to include Eishes Ish and Eishes Ach in this din of Ein Kidushin Toifsin. Ella, we got to throw the whole thing out and start from scratch. Sha'an Rav Yoina v'itema Ravuna Braid Rav Yoshua. Amar Kra. It says in the Parsha of Arayas, Kol asher yaseh mikol hatovosa eila v'nichvasu. Whoever does any of these abominations is going to get kares. Hukshu kol ha'arayas kula. All of these prohibited relations have been connected. La'achos isha. Ma'achos isha. Lo tafsi kidushin, because it says lo sikach. Av kol arayas kulam lo tafsi kidushin. And we're going to stop here. This is such a fundamental sugya. That's why I'm going as slow as I am, because it's very important to learn this very, very carefully.
Does the Rambam paskin anything on this?